We're back with Season 8, episode, whatever this episode is, 16, Friendship University. So, let's go through this one sequentially, shall we? Star Swirl the Bearded. Cool. Nice to see more of him. Always like to see that. I was actually hoping we'd see that he would get a Star Swirl episode about him exploring the land he helped establish. It'd probably be kind of boring, but I don't care. I wouldn't find it boring. Screw the rest of the people. You can quote me on that. We see him in Rare Find, climbing a mountain. We see him with Tree Hugger, doing the rapids. I'm not sure who the Dolly guy was. I wasn't sure which pony that was. I didn't recognize him. I do love the idea of him keeping connection with Twilight. If I was writing the show, obviously I'm not, one of the things I would do is before this episode, every time we see Twilight's office, there would be a couple more postcards there. And nobody, of course, would be able to recognize it. They'd just be like, there's just more postcards. So only people really paying attention would notice until this episode when we finally read one of the postcards and we realize that's been him doing it this whole time, right? And yeah, it's the Twilight to Celestia thing all over. It's awesome, and I love it. There's just something wholesome and cool about that. I've always loved the idea of someone who's traveling getting postcards to send back to someone. I know that sounds like a weird thing. It's something about that concept's always appealed to me. And especially in this case, because he has a special reason to travel. I hate to rehash this point, but he lived in a time that was much darker and much more hostile. In a time where friendship as a concept barely existed. Where the pattern was barely there, right? Being able to go through this and see all this stuff and just experience all of the world that has been grown as a consequence of the hard work and sacrifice he and his friends did back in the day. There's just something kind of awesome about that. Let me see Cozy Glow again. I'll come back to that. Anyways, we see Rarity, who has purchased the sewing machines entirely with her own bits, which immediately gets me thinking about budget. I wonder what the budget for this school is. Oh, don't mistake me, they clearly have one. And it's very clear, as I've mentioned multiple times, that Celestia is absolutely throwing political capital behind this school. So it's likely she's also throwing literal capital behind it. It's just interesting to think about. But yeah, Rarity, of course Rarity is doing well off. She's a successful dressmaker and shop owner in multiple very valuable locations. I mean, honestly, Rarity is probably more well-known than Twilight at this point. At least in terms of sheer numbers, right? Anyways. So, why waste time with a school that's just a school that means nothing when you can spend time at Friendship University? Okay. They make a distinction of Western Equestria again, while we're on the subject. I just point that out because there's a lot of little tidbits of world building in this episode, which I do like, as I usually do. And it's flim and flam. Now, let me get this out here, because some people seem to misunderstand my opinion. I don't dislike flim and flam. I mean, I'd punch him in the face in real life. But my point is, I don't dislike the characters. It's just, in my experience, most of their episodes are subpar. It has nothing to do with them and everything to do with the episode. Make sense? To use a comparison, of course, now I can't think of one. No, I got a comparison. The only times we ever focus on Tasha Yar in TNG was for bad episodes. So, I don't dislike Tasha Yar, right? Like, you see the logic here? Anyways, there is one exception to that, of course, which is Yesterday's Enterprise, which is a Tasha Yar episode and is actually worth a damn. Lore is another good example. Lore has Descent, which is just wow. And Data Lore, which was nowhere as good as I remembered when I actually went back through and analyzed it. He still gets one good episode, which is Brothers, but you get the point. Anyway, same concept, right? Same concept. Anyways, we were just talking about the idea of punishing 4 innocent people to capture 1 guilty person. And the usual argument that goes here, and this is a valid argument, I disagree with it, but it's still a valid argument, is that we need to make sure people are punished. So we do the catch-all. We throw out the umbrella, or sorry, the blanket to catch all the people and punish all the people to make sure that at the very least the guilty person is being punished and things are cool. Because, well, that's how escalation works. let me give you the most overt example of escalation I can think of off the top of my head. It happens a lot. In fact, there's a version of escalation that's happening right now in Forza Horizons 5, but I won't bore you with that. There was a D&D store, or rather a tabletop store I used to go to, and they used to have this little platter of candy. No, Darth Vader, I'm afraid we do still have to do my job. I'm sorry. Unless you want to give me $23 million right now, I'll skip the episode for that. Platter of candy. It was just there, it was just free for everyone. And usually people would show up, grab a piece of candy, move on, right? Sometimes you would, sometimes you wouldn't. Then there was one person who ruined it for everyone. This is escalation. One person shows up, violates the trust, violates the sanctity, decides to be selfish or greedy or evil, takes all the candy. Guess what they stopped doing? This is the concept of one person ruining it for everyone, also known as escalation, something I talk about a lot, because it comes up a whole lot when it comes to discussing justice systems and criminality and just general psychology and physiology. I can't think of the word all of a sudden. Philosophy when it comes to societies. Yeah, exactly. One jerk throws a glass bottle. Now all the football games have plastic bottles. That's exactly what this is. Now, the reason I bring this up is, first of all, we brought it up last episode because it was relevant there. But that's Flim and Flam. To a T. They are the person throwing a glass bottle. They are the person stealing all the candy. They are trying to ruin it for everyone. Now, here's the interesting part. So, obviously, that makes them villainous. Maybe that's the wrong word. That makes them antagonistic. But what's really interesting about this is it's also super rare. Which makes sense. How many people have we seen in this show who are people like this? One idiot or one jackass. There's probably more that I'm not thinking of, probably one-offs, but we generally don't see a lot of them, is my point. The only other one that comes to my mind immediately is Gladmane, who was the same thing. And I started thinking about it. It makes sense in the society that exists now because of what happened in the past, because of Star Swirl's efforts, because of all that's happened in the time going, that so many of pony culture, that's a bad English, that so many of the people within pony culture don't think like that or don't function like that, and therefore aren't the kind of idiots who will ruin everything for everyone else, which makes them more susceptible to those people. This is why, yeah, there you go, Sven Gallop. I knew there was another one. Sven Gallop, Gladmane, Flim and Flam. It makes a weird amount of sense that they can get away with what they do because of the society they exist in. Nobody is expecting a con artist, so they don't really know how to spot one when it's there. And let's be clear, even our main characters didn't spot Flim and Flam for what they are when they first encountered them, all the way back in Season 2, I think it was. Instead, it wasn't until they were proven, until they were exposed, that that knowledge was gifted upon them, and then they were cautious going forwards, right? Interesting to think about. Then Chancellor Naysay shows up. I hate him so much. Let's go ahead and give this... Cool song, by the way. Cool song, as usual. Yeah, so he's going to accredit this school. Why? He gives it away very clearly. There is absolutely no second-guessing, no other possible mentality for why he's doing this. This is a pony-first school. And he uses every opportunity to try and shame or fling mud at Twilight's school, which makes sense because one of his goals is to shut that school down. So he is propping up an opponent's school, flinging mud at this school, and this school's pony first. Of course he would accredit it. Of course he would back it. So, this is when the episode pisses me off. Not really because the episode does anything wrong, but because it hits a nerve. This is something I've been the victim of myself, which is part of why it pisses me off so damned much. It's a particular form of trolling. It's a specific slice of it, It's when someone tries to actively slant a perspective, and by the mere virtue of you trying to defend yourself against it, or to figure out what they're actually up to, you buy in to the narrative, the false narrative, that they are pushing. And this is what both Naysay and the Flim and Flam push on Twilight extensively. It's doubly interesting because the reason it usually works is because it pisses you off. And when we're angry, we don't think as straight, so we react more, which makes it easier for them to go ahead and twist and use. If you see someone going, ha! Then it's easy to use that against them. You might be more inclined to the person who's being reasonable and calm. The moment you pull yourself out of that anger, you look at the words they're using and they're nonsense. Chancellor Naysay's entire argument is actually stupid. And I quote, how could you use friendship as a weapon? You tell me, you wrote the book on it. There's no actual argument there. There's no point he's making. All he's doing is throwing her words back at her and flustering her. Now, that's the only one I wrote down, but they do this constantly. So we take them out back and shoot them. This then leads, of course, to Rarity, who says, uh-oh, when she sees Star Swirl. As usual, Tabitha St. Germain is amazing and pretty much carries the episode. But this is bad because, well, this is all about that wonderful circle of political capital, that concept of social currency, which is something I've talked about a lot. When someone as magnificently renowned as Star Swirl the Bearded is endorsing something, people pay attention to that. And that's a problem. Because we don't know what the issue is yet. I actually guessed it pretty early, but that's because I've actually been to college. We'll get to that in a minute. But the mere fact that someone like Star Swirl is endorsing this place, along with the Chancellor of the EEA or whatever it is, that's bad just by itself. Why? Well, let's assume for a moment, this is not true, of course. Let's assume for a moment that their school is completely above board. That there's no issues, no problems here. Cool. What happens when you have people like Flim and Flam who get this much attention, this much social currency, gathered to boost this many people coming to their university? Well, what you get is a massive built-in market who's already interested and invested in listening to what you have to say. You have a target audience. By that alone, this is dangerous. Never mind the actual scam they're doing. So, I'd like to explain a little bit why this pisses me off so much. They also have a catchy song. It's true. It is a good song. I need to write down the name of it because I didn't catch the name of the song. Song, question mark. There we go. So, how many of you have played Mass Effect 3? You remember Sanctuary? I'm not going to say specifics because I'm not interested in spoiling Mass Effect 3 here, but Mass Effect 3, Sanctuary. That is what pisses me off. It's a specific brand of betrayal that bothers me more than most do. Something that should be X and instead is Y, and the abuse and misuse of that. Exactly, Rascor. And while this is obviously nowhere near as extreme or nightmarishly horrific as that, this is the equestrian equivalent. This is preying on the desperate, preying on the innocent, preying on people who are looking for a sanctuary and finding this. And that pisses me off. And then Rarity's awesome. I'm sorry. I have to gush about Rarity. Excuse me, sorry. I have to gush about Plainity. Her disguise is awesome. She does this pop. She just... She nails it, of course. Everything's just amazing about this. I can't even. The bubblegum pop, the attitude, the hair, the one bit of hair sticking out, the I forget what it is, the back of her hat that she has on backwards. Just everything about that was absolutely perfect. And then of course there's eye patch. She has an eye patch. And what's funny is they make fun of it several times. She came in here relatively disguised. Oh, it was great. Oh yeah, there was a sticker over her cutie mark too. Oh, that was awesome. So they set up this whole scenario to blackmail Twilight, catching her try to snoop, try to discredit the school. Starswirl buys into it because he has low wisdom. I should mention that Starswirl having low wisdom does make sense, because we've already seen him that way. He has very high int. I'm pretty sure his wisdom is actually a negative modifier. So him buying into this school, especially given what they showcase, and him buying into Twilight being like this, doesn't really bother me all that much, because it's not really out of character. Yeah, he is the... That's a good way to put that, Ross. Yeah, wisdom was definitely Starswirl's dumb stat. He has charisma in spades, and he's got magic in spades, and he's very smart. Anyways, so they set up the blackmail scenario, and it works. But what's interesting is they try to blackmail them. They try to blackmail her in order to make her stop investigating. That by itself says everything it needs to. I will freely admit, I thought they were going to do something a little bit quiet, subtle, and frankly, insidious with this, like I mentioned earlier. But as the moment they try to get her to stop investigating, I'm like, okay, there is a scam. Got it. Cool. There is actually a scam involved. And I was pretty sure I knew what it was at that point in time because of my earlier suspicions. So Twilight questions herself. Good. No, I mean that. You should question yourself. You should challenge assertions. Because if you challenge an assertion and it's right, then it is reaffirmed. And if you challenge it and it is wrong, then it needs to be changed. That's just my little life advice for you right there. So it's like, okay, she challenges herself, questions herself. And then they completely just blindly stumble into the truth. I love Rarity's revelation. No, they're not cheap. And then, oh, this is the scam, isn't it? How many of you have been to college in the United States? Now, college isn't cheap, but one of the interesting things is it is possible, indeed likely, in fact, most people I know got nice, big college things that pay for college for you. I can't think of the frickin' term all of a sudden. And so it was cheaper to go to college, but cheaper doesn't mean free. There's a lot of expenditures. Scholarship, thank you. There's a lot of expenditures when it comes to college. And one of those wonderful, interesting things is the books. How many of you remember spending several $100s per book when you need somewhere around 8 to 10 books per class per semester? Yeah. So that's why I suspected this pretty early on, because I've been to college and I remember just how pricey books were. And obviously this is lessons, but you get the point, right? Cute. Cute. If you're lucky, you can sell the books back for a fraction of the price you paid for them. Sometimes they don't allow that. It depends on the college, it depends on the university. There's some malleability to this, but I can point to at least 7 universities off the top of my head that have done this exact this exact same scam. And let's call it what it is. It's a scam. That's not a $150 book. Yeah. Anyways, so the worksheets aren't free. Naturally, they charge Starswirl for virtually nothing. Of course they don't. They're smart. Social currency. Starswirl being there and liking their lessons is absolutely worth them giving away for such a tiny price. They charge everyone else, as we see immediately after. So, they want to expand the resort. Is it not doing well? I'm serious. It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because this is either naked greed or they're having financial problems. There's not really another direction you could take that. I lean towards the greed. It makes more sense based on their tone and their perspective, and this is well written enough episode that if they were having issues, they'd probably mention that at least once, but there's no hint of that. So it's probably just greed. They want to take over the strip, as Tratham just says. They want to expand and to be in charge of Las Pegasus. Cool. Then the episode does something very interesting. The episode brings up what I would refer to as an actual crime, and something that is almost horrific, and indeed is the kind of thing that would absolutely shut them down, is the kind of thing that's extremely easy to prove through hard evidence, is the kind of thing that should have pissed everyone off, and been the actual thing they're doing wrong. Something that is so horrific and terrible that they only mention it for exactly 2 lines, for a scene that lasts about 8 seconds. What? In case you're missing it, they directly copied her lessons, Twilight's lessons, and are just selling them. Half the lessons, excuse me. Half the time. Right. Now, you know me. I think that copy wrong is such a horrible thing, I invented a term for it. But some people don't understand that doesn't mean I'm against the concept of copyright. That doesn't mean I'm against the concept of rights when it comes to licensing or holders. If I make something and someone else steals it word for word and then sells it without my consent shortly after I made it, we have a problem. Now, what doubly bothers me about this is such a throwaway line, is that nobody ever noticed. Rarity, who has been a part of those lessons, doesn't recognize them. Nobody else there has ever been like, oh, these look familiar, or anything. And nobody ever actually recognized. Yeah, exactly. The thing that I hate to axe the entire episode because of this one point, but this is extremely important. This one point means that everything they were doing was a scam from word go. And what's doubly funny is there's also there's a nuanced answer to this, a complex answer to this. Okay, you can keep your school going. That's cool. We'll allow that. You can go ahead and keep using my lessons too. You just can't charge for it anymore. Now, they would probably not go for that, or they would be forced into that. Take your pick, since they are accredited now. But it would be an interesting way to kind of expand the school, because one of the things that Flim and Flam brings up, which is valid, is there's one school of friendship way over there in East Equestria, I think. I can't actually remember. It's one of them. They make a point of it. Well, no, they didn't, because they wanted to keep charging. So it's like, you know? But they, of course, they just brush over this immediately and just get right onto it. And instead, they show up, Planety shows up and says, it's not me, Planety, it's Rarity! Who? Rarity's the best part of this episode. So they're shut down. Cool. 2 things before we move on. First, how did they get a copy of my book? Not answered. Do not answer this question. But I want to show my evidence because I suspect it was Cozy Glow. Now, I don't know why. I have no reason to suspect that other than cinematography. Because one of the things you do in cinema is you propose a question and then you answer it visually. And the moment she asked that question, how did they get a copy of my book? Cozy Glow is right there at the door. I don't know why or for what purpose. I just want that out there up front. Second thing. The reason their con pisses me off so much is because this is very predatory in a pretty messed up way. It's not quite the gotcha method when it comes to mobile movage. However, what it is this is something that's actually been done in real life. You can go to Disneyland for free, but you have to pay per ride. Now, I don't think Disneyland actually did that, but there are resorts and there are places that will do exactly that method. Now, that business model is not necessarily bad. There's actually a validity to do that, assuming you're not being a predatory evil dickhead. The reason it's bad is because it is so very easy in order to hide and mask the cost of visit. If you drop $90 up front to go to Disneyland and you spend the whole day there riding rides and having fun, that's cool. But then you think, well, I could just go for free and ride the rides I want to. And it is very easy for normal people, no offense intended, to spend substantially more than $90 there. This is, in many ways, what the market of microtransactions is. Hiding the actual cost by making it look like it's cheaper than it is. And I tend to be against that kind of predatory practice in general, even in a more minor version like this. This is on top of the fact that the lessons are actually good because they're plagiarized, and the fact that they are being endorsed by the Chancellor and by Star Swirl. It's a clever scam, but it's still a scam, as evidenced by just how much they're charging for these poor things, for these stun things. So now we have to rate the episode. What are your opinions before I give mine? Oh yeah, complete missed opportunity to talk about for-profit universities while we're on the subject. See an MOP episode and I want to paint it black. Green is below yellow, yes. Blue, green, yellow. Orange, red, purple. If we are to presume for a moment that rarity is not in the episode, I would actively dislike this episode. It would be below average for me. Possibly in blue range. Ignoring the obvious pissing me off moment earlier. Granted, that's a me problem, but even if we were to take that and eject it from it, the episode, in my opinion, focuses on the wrong things for the wrong reasons. It doesn't expand on Flim and Flam in any way. It just shows how they're getting more clever. It doesn't really do anything for Twilight. Her moment of self-doubt is immediately destroyed, so there's no actual growth there. They don't really do anything with the university itself either, or the concepts that I brought up. They don't even bring up the concept of the for-profit schooling, like I just mentioned, right? Instead, it's just kind of a filler episode. The one thing they do, and Rascor's correct, the one thing that they do is they move Star Swirl forwards. Now that's good. Star Swirl getting moved forwards, that is good. He is the only one, however, who has any real movement or growth, or even establishment in this episode. Then we re-add the rarity scenes, which are awesome. I'm sorry. Planety scenes. And that, I think, bumps it up to average. That's not saying much, if I'm being honest, but I think I'm going to go ahead and go with average on this one. Which, if you're looking at the spreadsheet like I am, is fascinating, because this duo has written 4 episodes so far. The Times They Are a Changeling, which was an orange, and then yellow, yellow, yellow. They've got some consistency going for them. I'll give them that. And in fairness, and I do mean this with sincerity, there's nothing wrong with being average. I mean, let's be honest. What would you rather have? A bunch of average episodes or some good ones and some bad ones? Oh, yeah. We didn't even talk about the possibility of redemption. Do you mind if I share something? I actually pulled this up here. Now, I'm going to try to dance around this and not spoil, but this is a quote from Order of the Stick. There's a certain person who has just done something, and they're on the verge of death. And After their action, they essentially ask, have I been redeemed? So, word for word, the response to their question, have I been redeemed, is no. I'm truly sorry, name, but redemption requires more than simply the execution of your duty, even if you follow that duty to the end. True redemption demands that you seek forgiveness for your past misdeeds, that you atone for the actions that have caused those to turn away from you, that you even acknowledge you could in fact be wrong. You have done none of this. Perhaps if you had time, and then again, perhaps not. Redemption is a rare and special thing. It is not for everyone. And the reason this is relevant is because Flim and Flam. Now, someone actually asked in chat, is there, should Flim and Flam get a chance to redeem themselves? The answer, yeah, absolutely. But I point to that quote, redemption is a rare and special thing. It is not for everyone. Redemption has to come from within. You have to be given the chance from without, but all the chances of the world mean nothing if you do not internally want to redeem yourself. And Flim and Flam have zero reason to do that, as in every way that they have been presented so far. Now, the episode does bring this up extremely briefly. Starswirl mentions this. Twilight says, you don't understand, they're con artists, and Starswirl says, I spent a long time thinking ill of one person. You taught me to give them a chance. This is another thing the episode could have touched on and doesn't. This would be especially poignant, and I think, frankly, this would actually redeem the episode. Because MLP is really big on redeeming characters. We've seen this a lot. Having a character who does not want to be redeemed is a fascinating thing, especially for this setting, and it's something they could analyze and discuss. Please don't spoil, or even mention, but I hope that they do that, the exact concept I want from this with Chrysalis. Because they've already started on that path with her. She has been offered redemption from Starlight, remember? She batted that hand away. I really hope they do something with that. Anyways, I just wanted to comment on that because I was thinking about the redemption thing and I immediately thought of that quote. Order the Stick, by the way, is a wonderful comic. I highly recommend it. I need to get my Order the Stick books back here. I guess that's it. Next week, what do we got next week? I don't even know what we got next week. I'm just going to look at the names. Endin, Friend, and Yakety Sax are what we got next week. And as usual, I'm not reading the summary, so I have no idea what those are about. Although I have a weird feeling one of those is about yaks. I hope we get to see more of Yona, because Yona is awesome. I hope you have enjoyed. I will be streaming Mario Brothers 3 come Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. as always. See you around.